Yeah, so I'll just run through this list again. I found this other site, and this guy, I guess, is like really interested in the same topic of sociopaths and psychopaths. And I thought it was interesting. The traits actually of Russell are the same as the cult leader. And then it's funny, he tries to start a cult. I'll just kind of go down through this. I feel like I'm losing my voice because I've been talking like so much on these things. And I did like hours long because they had this news thing and it kept popping up, popping up, popping up like new stuff. And I had to keep trying to cover it. And then it just gets to the point where it's like, I don't even want to go through that type of edit. And I'll just count the whole thing. Okay, so it says Hare psychopathy checklist, right? So Robert Hare, in his book Without Conscience, lists the characteristics of a psychopath that and it's same as sociopath, ASPD. It's pretty much like the same characteristics and everything. Just because somebody questioned me, so I'm like, okay, but these are the traits. So, I mean, if you see these traits in somebody, it's not like I don't need a somebody, you know what I mean? A psychopathy is best thought of as a syndrome, a cluster of characteristics. Yeah, so I was trying to explain this. I was like, God, there's like a checklist of things, like, a number of these things. It doesn't have to be all of them, but it'll have most of them, even if you have like a handful of them. But I said I believe there's a spectrum, so like it could be like you might be this big narcissist, and then like maybe you do like some criminal activity or something, and then like then it'll, I think, and then it starts going up the scale to like certain types that do things like serial raping, which is it's the same as being a serial killer except for not being homicidal, except that they have a potential to do something like that. Doesn't mean they do, no, but they definitely have a potential because they're the action of rape is violence. And I was trying to explain, like, as a kid, like when you're doing those like what men called jokes, basically that's their mindset. Like it has a sadistic, like I'm doing something to hurt you, but I think it's funny, like an enjoyment about it. That's what rape is about. It's more in that range of things than it is actual sex. It's like you're doing something humiliating, something, yeah, so people can understand if you're not a rapist, right? But you probably have done, maybe you partook in frat housing. That's what I was talking about, like some of those conducts. Doesn't mean you're coming out as a psychopath, serial rapist, but you may have done those things. And so you can kind of refer to the mindset of that, right? Were you trying to sexually abuse your friend? Like purposely? I'm telling you that that wasn't the thing at all. It was more of, pranking was really big back then. And then I used to do like crank calls and things like that. We were just out of control. Okay. Yeah, I was like, let's just not talk about this anymore. Okay, so Hare divides the characteristics into two groups. Firstly are the personal and emotional characteristics of a psychopath, and secondly are the features of the antisocial lifestyle. So, there are going to be some things in this where someone might go, oh, well, I'm like that, or something like that. I mean, really, it has to be this cluster, like, there's a cluster thing. And I was like, psychopaths tend to talk a lot. Do I not talk a lot? I talk a fucking lot. Now, I didn't before, though. Um, but other people might, because it could be for different other reasons, right? I talked about the autistic thing because they have confused some of these traits with somebody with autism when technically, like, they're not actual, like, they're not a psychopath, or they don't have ASPD or BPD or anything like that, and they kind of confused it. So and they may have confused some other things with it. So that's what I was saying. I go, I'm not here to diagnose mental illness, which is different, because we consider this a personality disorder, right? As you would see, a narcissist has a personality disorder, right? It's kind of like whatever. Like if you're just a narcissist, it's like whatever, right? But this one is worse because it has that, but then it's a much more complex thing to have this, and it's, you know, because you could live with someone who's a narcissist. They're going to be annoying as shit, but they're not like out killing people or harming people. Typically, they're not harming people or whatever. If you're looking at it, if like I said, there's things that could be debatable. Like maybe they're missing all the other traits of that person, and they could be straight up socio, but because they're good, they're manipulators, right? Some are really good manipulators, but most of them, like I'm pulling out Rusley's a bad one. Cause you know, it's like to me, it's like an everyday thing. I see these guys, and it's just like, but I have to pay attention, right? Like I could totally be watching a socio the whole time, and I'm just not thinking about it. And then like one day, I'm like, oh, and I focus my attention on them. I was like, are they? Oh, yeah, they are. Huh? Just because I don't know, I just they didn't, you know, do something to me or some, you know what I mean? It's just like I'm not thinking everybody is a sociopath. I'm meeting them or whatever the case may be, right? But they have to do something really for me to focus on that. But most of the time, unless they're, you know, being really destructive. But it says these stories may be unconvincing, but they somehow manage to present themselves as likable and charming. For some people, however, the psychopath is too smooth or is simply playing a role. The psychopath can often talk about any subject as if he were an expert, often even using the jargon. Some of them do it so well and with such confidence that they can even fool psychologists, experts in this field who know they're talking to a psychopath. See, to me today, I just think some of the people in the field are also socios, so it's kind of like, um, you seem like me, dude. Yeah. And it says at the same time, some of the serial killers talk about their crimes in gory detail with almost no emotion. People who experience this find it very unnerving. Psychopaths tend to have enormous egos. Well, it's the same thing. If you go back to this, and these guys are actually bragging about raping a bunch of girls, but the way that they talk about it, nobody cares that they raped them, right? They're like, I got this girl and I did this and that. Nobody cares that they raped them, right? No questions asked. I mean, and the guy's not going to tell them anyway. And they're bragging about their crime. And they'll go and tell a whole bunch of men this crap. And then men just start in on their bullshit. And then when he's accused, then he starts playing that, oh no, it was consensual, you know. They start doing that. It's the same thing, actually, with the serial killer. Psychopaths tend to have enormous egos, like a Trump, an incredible sense of entitlement, and an overinflated sense of own self worth, like all white men, right? Yes. Um, and importance, right? Because, and where would they get that, right? The Bible, right? They were taught to be, that they're born leaders and women must submit to them. So, guess who wrote the Bible? A whole bunch of these guys, right? There's going to be people that are going to have issues with me saying that, but it's just, we can figure this out. They are arrogant and cocky, and they have an opinion on everything, and they are always right. I have an opinion on everything. No, I don't have an opinion on everything. I have an opinion on things that I that is important. There's lots of topics I won't even touch because I know I don't know enough to even come in on it. So I know my limits here. They have incredible confidence, but often without the competence, and they typically have a lot of grandiose plans for the future. I want the world to be the way I want it to be, said one psychopath. Their role as guru or maestro, they often claim to have magic powers. I do, no, or to be able to do things that other people cannot. Okay, yeah, like any guru type of guy or spiritual leaders, pastors, priests, anybody like that. Like those are people like that. It says this enhances their prestige among their followers. And if anyone questions them about what they're not using, why they're not using their gifts right now, they always have a good story to excuse themselves. Yeah, that's like every group. There's Russell and he's running away, you know what I mean? Okay, so absence of guilt and remorse. One of the most stunning characteristics of a psychopath is the total lack of guilt or remorse that they experience, regardless of the effect of their actions on others. See, we'll read through these traits, I'm just saying, but now we know how it's kind of came about, right? We're getting there. And they knew a lot of this information, but they never tackled it properly. I find it to be nuts. So, from serial killers to cult leaders to corporate psychopaths to the child psychopath, the child psychopath. Um, I wouldn't want to say, okay, so the child socio, okay, yeah, because that's actually when it's developed. So, I mean, it's kind of like, aren't they all are? I mean, technically, but I wouldn't, they don't want to diagnose them before like the teen years. And if they're already would be classified that by then, we're in trouble, right? So there's been some cases of that. I don't know how often. I don't think they actually catch it really ever because they're just being lazy assholes when they're dealing with these people. But they typically have a justification for the decisions that they have made and for what they have done. Yeah, so like I'll come out and go, I'm a victim of so and so, and then all of a sudden they come out of nowhere, right? And then they find a justification to target me. Like that's a sign of a socio, actually, because if okay, let's say that somebody else, like we're dealing with celebrities being accused, right? So let's say some other celebrities being accused of something, and you think that the story's not true. Is your automatic response to go bully the victim? It should not be. Like it's just not that thing. I will have quarrels with sociopaths that make stories up, and then I believe them at first, right? Or I give them the benefit of the doubt, right? And then when I find out they're lying, I might quarrel with them a little bit. Yeah. I don't go targeting victims. That's just not what I do. But if I do find some additional information that somebody also did something to somebody and I see them actually bullying the victims, I may go after that person. Like I may start like, digging into them. Um, but that's only because they're being a predator, right? And they're being a bully and all that stuff. Victims coming out talking about their stories is not me bullying my perpetrators, but that's a sociopath that would flip it into that. Some other sociopath traits would be like, okay, so here's my friend. My friend's being accused, so I'm gonna go target the victim. That's another person that has those traits. That's just not that should not be in your personality at all to do that. Bullies are typically the sociopaths. That's what we've come to the conclusion. And interviews with psychopaths reveal that for them, people are simply objects. There you go. I was like, I know the object thing because they start talking about us like objects. It's not often that I hear them say the word object though. But I did get Russell talking about objects, which I thought was funny because most often they don't actually use the word object. They just talk about us as an object. But things to be used, yes. And so women have been actually saying this for a long time. So it started to come together. So it's like, I felt used by this guy. Yeah, because the person that you were with is a sociopath. And that is a trait that's so obvious, but for some reason, I don't think they understand that. It was kind of brushed off as like, oh, that's a womanizer, like a watered down version of a serial rapist type of thing. But no, it's like a watered down version of somebody that has these traits. And that's actually part of the traits, but they haven't. I think that these are some of the things where they didn't really correlate together with that specific um, a PD, right? Even family members have the same value as other things they own, such as a mobile phone or a coat. I've actually described that as like a purse. They're like, maybe the red purse today, maybe the yellow one tomorrow. maybe the purple one, Friday. Like, that's how they view people. They're just objects. It's like, this would look good on me today. We'll just throw it out tomorrow. That's how they treat humans. So when you feel used like that, yes. And no, that's not a normal, healthy man or woman. I don't know how many women have done that type of thing, but they exist. We've been finding them. So, um, but again, it's kind of a strange thing because these socios will feel used. Um, it could get flip floppery, like, but I won't complicate it right now. It says and use people. Okay, and use people they do. So they will take their money, their possessions, their time, their expertise, their efforts, their bodies, and their souls. So this is how like slavery came out actually. So this was present in order to have slavery. So somebody owning slaves like humans, right? So that's why it was interesting when I was looking back into the male supremacist portions. I was like, yeah, but in order to even do that, you need to have some type of problem with yourself. You know what I mean? Like, how do you go treat humans like that? Just, it wouldn't even matter if they gave me some strange ideology, like these people were born on earth just like that. I mean, you have to have something wrong with you to treat other people lesser, right? So the answer in that was how they viewed women as objects. So they're already now here, right? But it wasn't just that. There was a lot of abuse, right? So the abuse, the combination of abuse, and now they don't have any empathy. And these crazed, wild son of a bitches just started creating all this shit, and they don't care. They had no care in the world about agency, nothing. And they're like, we're gonna get some slaves, some human slave, this thing. So yeah, that was definitely present throughout history, and it's just a combination of unhealthy child upbringing. It's not like they cared about mental health, thousands of years ago. But yeah, that's definitely the component, because I was like, yeah, so they start treating all humans like objects, women are objects, people of color are object, other men are objects. So it just becomes a sort of like thing about it. So people who have been duped by psychopaths for the religious reasons have said that it's like being raped spiritually. I would say that would be the proper term. There, some people might get offended because they're saying the word raped, and it's and spiritually, it's like, yeah, they're just they rape your soul, like, basically. And it's like, and all this without the slightest care in the world for the victims. Right, right. So what has America done to the victims? Treat them like shit, right? So if you were to classify America like as a human, it would be a sociopath. It would be a psychopath, definitely. So they don't have any care in the world for victims of the harm that they did to any of us, right? Any group of people that have suffered in the country, everybody but a white man. But you know what I mean? They don't have a soul. So I mean, that's a choice, right? So it's not like they say that they care about you, right? But what did they do to show you that they care, right? Because their actions are different than their words, right? Because they're a lot of talk, right? That's what they're saying. They're a lot of talk. And so if their actions are not matching, and Trump's another good example of that, his words don't match with it doesn't match with anything. He's a terrible human. So, but we could get some insight that he was horribly abused by probably his dad. Maybe he was molested. I don't know, but he's too much of that man bullshit, and the male sub thing to say that he ever was a victim to any of it. But for him to go raping other people, more than likely somebody touched that guy. And I was even looking at the Hitler thing, because I was like, something had to happen for this dude to go off like that, because when I'm looking at all these other cases, it's like he's basically a serial killer too. And his upbringing, I believe, was Catholic. So it may have been a thing where maybe somebody sexually abused him or beat the shit out of him, or the very strict military type of home life, where I'm not sure, and then somebody else could have touched him massively, but something terrible happened there, and he basically became basically a serial killer. He decided, I'm just gonna serial kill all the Jews, right? Like that type of thing. And so, yeah, it wasn't just because somebody came up with an idea to go do something like that. That's a mind of a psychopath, right? Sociopath, ASPD, whatever. So, and it's kind of important to know that stuff, because then it tells you all these other criminals, and it's like, gee, you guys cry about all these criminals being created, so wouldn't you want to target like this area? Like, really? Because then the world could be a better place, right? And they know it's from abuse, and it's like, it's almost like they just did not want to target their religions. They didn't want to target any of that. And so they just let it go on. It's like, we want to cry about the problem, but we don't want to actually fix it. So, you have to do something to get them arrested or whatever they're doing. Like the anti-trans thing is another thing that's child abuse. So, of them going after them, right? So, and they're telling their kids like there's something wrong with them, and yeah, and as we saw, that it created these monsters out of it sometimes, if they are extraordinarily abusive to that kid. We've only seen one case of that for like a mass shooting, but more than likely it was probably internalized, maybe from the verbal abuse of that. It's hard to say because I don't know what happened with that case, like with the parents or whatever with it, but the church itself would keep, saying this very negative talk on that stuff. So it could be that and a combo of some other things. But yeah, it's not that common, but if it could become common if they keep abusing those kids, it can be. And the female picked up the traits, like that maybe the identifier was to the socio male. That's why I was concerned about it, because I was like, yeah, mostly like when you see man, you see the socio male, and not generally like a healthy male, right? So I was thinking that maybe the identifying thing for them, because they're already having issues, was identifying with those people that did that stuff. Because I'd say all of them probably have ASPD, something of that nature. So where everybody's an object, where they can just go in a room and just shoot everybody. That's how you could shoot kids, because they're objects in their mind. They're not human. They don't have any um, worth to them. It's just they're just objects, right? It's just like shooting a bunch of purses, right? They just don't care. But they know that it's very um, they know it's horrific. They know it's a horrific thing to do. And so, they do things like that. It's unfortunate that it's not being tackled early enough, because I honestly feel that if it is, that you could possibly change things around, because there's something where they need attention. Like there's, where something's not intercepted right there, because the home life structure, when you're a kid, you don't know you're in abuse. So a whole lot of things could be going on, and then what's the way out of it? And it just sort of snowballs into this thing like that, right? That's my opinion on it. I think that's what's going on, because when I'm reading through all this stuff, it's like, God, if somebody just jumped in like right around here, maybe this wouldn't have happened. The absence of remorse is evidenced by the fact that many psychopaths, even after being caught and punished for some crimes, continue to do the same thing. Yeah, they're hardwired, so they don't care about rules and laws. So, I mean, you see a Russell Brand, right? Like he got arrested, gets in trouble, and then he keeps doing it, right? Because it doesn't mean anything to him. And then it's true, it gets reinforced, and then they don't tackle the right thing, because he's totally a sociopath, like big time. And he's just running. They're like, oh, sex addiction. I'm like, that's not sex addiction. It's closest to a serial killer. And the other disturbing thing about him is that he joked about killing a woman. And my issue with that is all his jokes are real. And people are giving stories of him having these things of violence. And I was like, I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out that it may happen. It may have happened one time, because it's not a funny joke, and his jokes are based off of his real life experience, like what he did with somebody the night before, the conduct that he does. So why would there be a random, one time I raped this girl and I killed her? Like nonchalant, you know? And so they're pulling up the other type of violence of him throwing lamps and, being very physically violent. And yeah, so he has a thing where that could happen. So I don't know if it happened. It could have happened. I wouldn't disregard it as just a joke. I don't know why anybody would disregard it as just a joke. Because where on the other jokes, where is he actually joking? They're like based on things that he did. So it's disturbing. Don't know, but he's that one that's arrogant and he would throw it out there. And he, just like that other serial killer guy that was like saying stuff. Um, yeah, so I wouldn't rule it out. When caught out, psychopaths will often deny or minimize the effect of the actions on others. Okay, so we're all victim to this at some point. I just kind of wanted to bring it to attention to everybody, if you didn't know, where they had us minimizing sexual assaults on us, like them grabbing our boob or butt or anything like that, going, that's not that big a deal. Yeah, that's the socio, because they all did it, right? And so I'm just trying to be honest about the things that we did as a kid, because there's something to pull from it, because it's the mindset. It's just that we didn't turn into a sociopath, thank God. But the mindset of doing those things as a kid, before it's corrected and stuff like that, before you're like, yeah, this is probably not a good idea to be fucking, like doing this crap. But the things when you're doing those things as a kid, yeah. It's like that mindset, but then it's just now they're an adult and it stays like that, and they're getting a thrill off of harming people unconsensually. I should say it like that, because there's, people that do things consensually with each other that might be into the, some other stuff. But the thing is, their thrill is something that has to do without consent. Like they need to harm another human against their will versus, people consenting to a situation. There's no thrill in that, right? They're not causing the same type of, terror and harm or embarrassment, humiliation that it is when you do something like that to somebody without consent, right? It's not about sex, guys, because you hear these people go, the guy's so hot, he has women throwing themselves at him all the time. It's like, yeah, but that's not a thrill to them. So the thrill is doing something criminal and feeling more powerful, and these things going after another victim. Okay, so, and they can play the victim role well. Hey, Corey Feldman. Yeah, that one. Yeah, very high on the narc scale, very high on the pathological liar scale. A lot of them, they all lie, but my God, this one was in those really top trait things. Perhaps he became a predator because of the early abuse. Like his parents were not great, and then it just turned into that thing. Like they were originally like a victim to something, and then they turned into a perpetrator. And then the thing about them is that when they got called out, they went and did a full hide and cover and started heavily targeting their victims. I haven't, most of the people that I've talked about on here haven't been that bad. Like even Kevin's ridiculous. But Kevin, I didn't notice him now, the thing with Kevin, he will think his shit out, and he'll be very sly and saying some evil shit in his comments, right? But I don't think he did the full bully fest. He tries to sit back and plays, I'm the good guy. And but he'll say something like, kill them with kindness and say that shit, and then people go commit suicide or something like that. He'll do some shit like that. He'll say some vindictive, like he thinks it out. He says something kind of crafty, and versus so and so over there that comes and tries to shut us all down. You know, if anything, hopefully Kevin's learning from himself, you know, from this shit, you know. Um my hope is that them targeting it properly, you know, that they could get better at a point. I don't know. They just haven't. So, you know, it's up to the perpetrator to want to go get help and stop the way that they're acting, because it's not doing them any good. Because if they keep going on and on and on, like that one has, um, eventually the road's gonna end. So you just don't know with these people. So yeah, and then they start getting bully packs and making a conspiracy. I think just the conspiracy thing was always part of the sociopath thing, because it's like creating the conspiracy mostly for like, it's like a guru type thing. It's like a spiritual leader almost in that same mentality, where you could just gaslight a bunch of people going, well, you never know. Oh, this other thing's actually going on. Don't listen to those people. It's basically a cultish thing there. So, but they create this conspiracy. So then it's a gaslight, because you're like, oh, I believed in this, you know, whole other thing going on, and I'm just going to ignore reality and say fuck it to the wind and listen to this guy, which is just crazy, but part of that whole the traits of these guys. Lack of empathy. So another one of the important characteristics. I actually think this is the main meat of the sociopath, is the lack of empathy, and I believe that came about because of the child abuse or neglect part, where they didn't develop it properly. And this is like the main thing where they can harm people, because if you have empathy for somebody or people, groups, every, you know, animal, whatever, you're not going to go run out and try to harm them purposely, right? And you would be sympathetic to their pain, right? You may not be able to comprehend like what they're going through, but you would feel sadness, right, for somebody going through something, or at least have a knowledge like, you know, oh, I don't want to bother that person because they're going through something today. No, these guys, this is when they pop up. I was like, you could be suffering, right? And you're in pain. You're like that dying animal. Like, that's how they kind of view you. Like, you're in pain, right? You're going through this thing. All of a sudden, these son of a bitches will pop up, and then they want to come in for the kill. Like, it's just it's like Jaws, you know? You know, like you're bleeding in the water, and it's like, ah, you know, now's a good time to go after that, you know? So that's them. And yeah, they have no way to sympathize with you or would at all, and it's kind of all very self-serving for themselves. They just don't care about other people's pain or their suffering or anything they go through. And yeah, and then they may, that it seems to be like anytime that anybody is going through any pain or anything like that, that's the time that they want to come out and feel powerful and try to devour somebody. And another one of the, yeah, okay, so then it says the inability to understand what other people are feeling or experiencing, and they don't know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. Now, a lot of us can't, though. Like, I was talking about that Menendez case. I was like, God, you know, it's really hard to, like, put yourself in that position to make a choice like that. And for me, it's like you did need more information to kind of, like, go there. I don't know how I would put it for them. It's more like they don't care to either, even if they could. Okay, so it says what they do is learn about emotions. They learn from other people what emotions feel like, what they experience, and what is expected in certain situations. Oh yeah, men have done this all the time. They're like, oh no, don't say this because the women are gonna get mad. So we gotta act up, you know, oh yeah, we feel really bad. Yeah, it's all fake. And it's like to totally ignore that. That's the traits of the socio. So, Yeah. Yeah, because they don't feel any empathy for you. They're playing pretending, but they just don't. And then they've made excuses for this, like, oh, he's not a very sensitive guy or something. I don't know. It's just they've made excuses for these guys the whole time. Okay, it says therefore they can, and it's very hard for them to connect with their sons and daughters as well. And that may be like, this is the thing where I'm thinking versus a genetic thing generally. Like, it's more just because the dad is one, and then they're not capable of emotionally connecting to anyone actually, and then it's kind of a problem with the child, right? So yeah. Okay, so then it says therefore they can appear to be very caring and loving because they're learning about emotions, right? So then, but it's all a charade, a show playing acting in order to manipulate the emotions of others. I don't think they can manipulate that much. Like, as far as like, if you're their kid and they're a sociopath, that play pretending thing, like, I think the kid would eventually know that they don't, like, they always have this feeling like, I don't feel loved. I don't know. There's something with that one. Okay, it says I can tell when somebody's like, they don't really care about me, you know what I mean? And they want something, and then but it's not for a good reason. Like, they don't care about me as a human. Technically, it's just they want some selfish thing, you know what I mean? But it's all a charade, a show, play acting in order to manipulate emotions of others. Being incapable of empathy means they're incapable of love. They can love themselves. But to what type of love that is. It's a very narcissistic love. If they have that at all. There's actually some that they're like hate fucking city, okay? Um, but some of them can. I mean, for me to sit there and say like all these sociopaths that are out here that are total rapists and everybody, to say that like none of them feel love. I mean, I would say it depends where on the scale do they lie. Maybe it's more that, like, they could be on the spectrum, maybe a little bit lower, and maybe they're capable of it for certain people. But if you hate a whole gender and you're going on like that, technically, whatever love that is isn't really good. So maybe looking at it like that. The emotional world of a psychopath is indeed shallow and dark. Yeah. Okay, wait, hold on. This thing's about to fall. I don't know what I did. And this can be difficult to understand when dealing with the sociopath. Deceit and manipulation. I lie like I breathe, one as much as the other. Explain one psychopath. Coreyfield. Okay, so, but even when they are caught out in a lie, yes, they simply carry on. It's the craziest thing. Like, they look like a damn fool and they just go on, they keep going on with their bullshit. And it says, remember, no guilt or remorse. They have no shame, is what you should put in there. They have no shame. I would be embarrassed. Like, if I got caught in a lie, I don't purposely lie. Like, I will trip over words and stuff like that, but I don't purposely lie. Like, and this, it means that I need to hide from Hitler. I mean, it's not a trait of mine. So, but if I did, let's just say I did a white lie with somebody, and then I get totally caught. No, I would confront it and be like, yeah, I totally did. And then it would be embarrassing. Like, it would, but they don't even feel that. So they simply change the story to try and fit in with the lie. Yeah. They'll start creating a bigger lie around that lie. Sometimes they lie so much that it's difficult to know if they know themselves that they're lying. The answer is usually yes, and typically they are proud of the fact that they are good liars. That big ego again, yeah. And it is one of the I can't talk. Okay, extraordinary characteristics of a psychopath. They are totally unfazed by being caught out in a lie. And what do they lie? Why do they lie? To manipulate and control others. Yes. And they need to keep their cult or whatever the thing is. And those people believe anything they tell them. It could be totally non-factual. And they just start throwing things out there and everybody's like nodding their head. And it's like, if I'm wrong, I want my followers to like say something, it's like correct me. Or if they have a different thing of opinion, but not attacking me, saying some weird shit that some of these people did. But I'm not always right. So, you want a gauge because you don't want to run around looking like sounding like a fool, like a Trump, right? But he doesn't even care. Like, no, I don't want to sound like a fool. But they don't care. They don't have that shame. That's what I'm saying. I'm so overly like, yeah, I don't want to sound stupid. But okay, so they believe that the world is full of predators and prey. Manipulate and control others. They are all the time trying to dominate and control. Yes, they believe that the world is full of predators and prey, and they are definitely predators. Other people are weak. So the weak thing comes from the male supremacist portion, and then stupid. I this isn't fair because the majority of the public is not bright. So I don't think everybody's stupid, but I think a huge portion of America is stupid. I will absolutely admit that. Because they are. They voted for Trump and deserve to be taken advantage of. See, I don't believe that people deserve to be taken advantage of. So even if you thought that people are stupid, if that comes in the tail end, then you might be a psychopath. But no, that they deserve to be taken advantage of. So they tell them that. I said that their brain is wired so crazy. So that's their shelving, right? So they'll go and do a crime on you. They're like, you know what? You're so stupid because you just left your wallet open. So, you know what? I'm going to have to take it. Totally, like that type of thing. You're the one that's there. We're alone in an alley. You're stupid for being alone in the alley. And I'm here. I'm going to take advantage of it. Yeah, that's their brain. In fact, the psychopath is doing them a favor, teaching them lessons. Yes, I'm going to teach you a lesson being alone in an alleyway, girl. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's fucking. Oh, yeah, the same thing. When they used to blame women for rape, right? They're like, you wore that dress. I'm going to teach you a lesson. That is the brain of a rapist, of a sociopath. They're all rapists are sociopaths, but that is their logic and reasoning. And it's like, it's a hate thing, because they were also taught to hate women generally, but like, they're taught like if women dress a certain way, that means they're little whores and we do not respect them. So then they see somebody like in a skirt or something. Let's just say that because we know it's not just about that. But then they do that. They'll be like, well, she wanted it, so I'm gonna go do it, and she made me do it. She was there. Yeah, simple as that. They're fucking pieces of shit. When you consider the characteristics of a psychopath we've looked at so far, it's no wonder that they swindle, cheat, con, and defraud others. They play by different rules than normal people, rules that normal people are totally unaware of. What? Normally people do not consider that others willfully do evil and harm people because they have no conscience. I do. I think a lot of them are. So they're simply unaware of how psychopaths work. These are the ignorant people, I guess. Okay, so this puts them at a tremendous disadvantage when in a relationship with one, and it's worth learning to recognize some of the signs of them, the characteristics in the abusive relationship. Shallow emotions. Psychopaths are unable to describe the intricacies of different emotions because they don't experience them. They can't write a real love song unless it's about them, and I don't know. They know it would be them mimicking someone else or the feelings for themselves. They may mistake. Wait, um, they may they may mistake sexual arousal for love. There you go. I'm glad they put that in there because, yeah, isn't that weird? It was in Russell Brown's thing too. That's why I was like, he's like, when he got raped, when his dad got him raped, he's like, I'm in love with that girl, right? And I was like, you just fucking got raped, you dumbass. You don't even know her, right? It turned into this thing. I go, that's not love, but that's, he equated it to love. So he put love in raping or getting raped, right? That type of thing. And no, and the dad doesn't have any real love for the son. He's not capable either. So his version of love is that. And it's all related around, well, that person would be a rapist, but I don't think they're raping for love. So, but I'm just saying, like, that emotion of that, or anger for irritability. One thing is common is that many of them say they can make themselves angry. They say they can turn it on and off, but they don't know how fear feels. Um, I it depends. They can certainly notice the signs of fear in other people, but they are unable to describe any bodily sensations. I think it just depends on what, and on the spectrum. For many people, fear is a motivator in that they may do things or not do things because of fear of the consequences. Yeah, like jumping on a car, moving, right? And then you could die, right? Okay, so not so in psychopaths because they don't experience the unpleasant sensation of fear. I hate this. Okay, it reminded me of something recent, in the more recent times, and I was just like, yeah, I don't know. This obviously has far-reaching effects on the decisions they make. They do, however, know how to manipulate others through fear. Some of these people are so shitty. They try to mimic emotions to manipulate to try to get something, and then it's all bullshit. And I can't figure. I don't know. The MO of some of these fucking psychos. Just to be evil, just to be evil, just to be evil. It's just a thrill just to be evil. That's it. A world apart, these characteristics of a psychopath may seem unreal to normal people, but for those who have been victim, understand the inner world of a psychopath may be the only way to make sense of the torment and distress they have experienced. Although it can actually be very difficult to recognize these things if you are still in the relationship. Yeah, so then they go into their book. So, but this person did a whole like website, a lot of different things on it. There's another page I could read another day, but oh my god, I'm gonna run out of voice here. I was gonna do the other page actually first, but it was on the cult one, but I can go on that later. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just some of the things that they do. And so, yeah, I mean, you should know all these traits. They're not very hard. I mean, why is somebody, you don't need to be anything to know these traits. It's just like narcissism is like in a portion, but they lack, mostly when they lack that empathy thing, that's actually like the meat of their problems, really. And then they can get depression, they have emotions, but they're pretty effed up and your problem. But yeah, so this is kind of the underlying thing for somebody to be a serial killer. So in the serial killer portion, the homicidal thing. So they didn't get into homicidal stuff here. It's just kind of like the basic, like this would be a serial rapist type. It could be anybody. It's kind of like the foundation to it. And then the homicidal part is the part where I'm trying to, figure out why that pops in some and doesn't, but I don't know. I mean, this person here alone is capable of it. It just wouldn't matter. But there's so many different ones. I would say most of them are probably capable of it, but to some that may not be a thrill. I mean, it's a matter of what they want to do, right? So whatever gets their jollies off. Because humans are their little puppets. The sight of it, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I would disagree with in here. That was kind of a general outline of them. Robert Hare is the Canadian psychologist. He is a Canadian forensic psychologist known for his research in the field of criminal psychology. He is a professor emeritus of the University of British Columbia, where he specializes in psychopathology and psychophysiology. He advises the FBI's Child Abduction and Serial Murder Investigative Resource Center and consults for British and North America prison services. Yeah, I mean, anything I'm saying wouldn't be away from what he's going on. So, no, we're on point to, I mean, at least from what I went through right here, there wasn't a conflict in how I view it. I mean, maybe a couple things I added to it, but there wasn't anything. It was a very generic outline because, if we're going to sit there and go on this spectrum thing, then it would vary quite a bit depending on things. But no, I don't know what the problem is with somebody else. Like, are you this? It's like, I'm studying from the people that are writing and doing that. So that person does stuff for, a lot of things there. So, you can read up on them. So that's the reference. And so it's not out of somebody's butt. It's just, you know, they've done a lot of research. So it's funny because here's the thing. Let me tell you something. This guy probably went to school and he went and did all these different things, right? Oh, he's actually 92. I don't know why it said I don't know. He's born in 1934. Okay, anyway, that he probably did all these things. It says, okay, he went to school, right? I didn't have to go to school because I got raped by them all, right? I'm just saying this. He did a school study and then I did a real life study. Okay, so these two things, like, who do you think would be more correct? Like, if you're really actually dealing with the people, right? Now, what I think here he did is went and talked to some people with it, right? Versus him being a female like myself, having to be confronted by them in real life and how they lured me, right? Because it's different having one of them tell him, like, their emotions and whatever, tell them about themselves and how they feel when, the study on them, like when they're in a prison or whatever. Unlike I actually get a more insight of view being a victim to them. Not that that's a great thing. This is probably not the study you want. But being a victim to them to know, oh, this is what they did first, and then they did this, and then this is what they did in the aftermath. And then once they got reported, right, then they started doing this thing, and they started manipulating, and then they started doing this, and then spouting off that they're goddamn Christians. You know what I mean? Like, I can go through this whole pattern of things and there was so many of them, and then the cops being that way too. So, but it's funny he's dealing with FBI, but FBI is the one that was treating me like shit on the phone, right? You wouldn't treat a victim of crime like shit unless you have this type of problem. So we're talking about those things too. And he's a male, and he probably does have some of those traits. And so yeah, so their perspective of it also would be, I'm pretty sure, limited because even, like I said, even Albert Einstein was so fucked up on, like, the male supremacist crap, like it was in his bullshit. And I was just like, even the smartest guy can't fucking figure out how dumb he is with that shit right there. You know? I mean, I couldn't, you know what I mean? It's just, they all have faults, right? Mostly males. But they don't have the female perspective of this, so yeah. Yeah, for some reason it was mostly males. I don't know. From what I've seen, mostly males, particularly on this particular topic, or at least that get acknowledged, let's put it that way. Which is interesting because I just think it's a bunch of sociopath guys that are like, I want to study about myself, I have these deep desires to chop people up. Why do I want to do that? I don't know. But and why that would be of interest, I don't know. Is criminal psychology. I'm only interested in, yeah, okay, causes this. Okay, so what does he say? Hare's research on the causes of psychopathy focused initially on whether such persons show abnormal patterns of anticipation or response, such as low levels of anxiety or high impulsiveness to adverse stimuli, punishments such as mild but painful electric shocks, or pleasant stimuli, rewards such as a slide of a naked body. Further, following Clicky, Hare investigated whether the fundamental underlying pathology is a semantic affective deficit and inability to understand or experience the full emotional meaning of life events, while establishing a range of idiosyncrasies in linguistics and affective processing under certain conditions. The research program has not confirmed a common pathology of psychopathy. Here's contention that the pathology is likely due in large part to an inherited or hardwired deficit in cerebral brain function remains speculative. Hare has defined sociopathy as a condition distinct from psychopathy. See, like I said, there's, opinions, but from psychopathy caused by growing up in an antisocial or criminal subculture rather than being marked by a basic lack of social, emotional, or moral reasoning. So here's where I'm thinking, like, maybe they got confused because maybe it's just sociopath and they were looking at somebody with, like, say autistic and they were socio, or some other, that could be something else that was with it, or it just wasn't. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. But anyway, that's his thing about it. Cause of growing up in an antisocial or criminal subculture rather than being marked by a basic lack of social, emotion, or moral reasoning. He has also regarded the DSM-IV diagnosis. He has also regarded the DSM-IV diagnosis of ASPD as separate to his concept of psychopathy. That's interesting, but as it did not list the same underlying personality traits, he suggested that ASPD would cover several times more people than psychopath. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. But maybe he just doesn't want to do that. But yeah, there's a lot, so several times more, as it should actually, because they're pretty fucked up. Okay, but he's not getting raped a million times a day. Okay, and he probably didn't even consider rape. Okay, because he's an old guy. He's from the 30s. And so he probably has some faults in his thinking here, but then psychopathy, and then while the prevalence of sociopathy is not known, it would likely cover considerably more people than ASPD. That's interesting. But I would just call them sociopaths. I actually think that's the more correct thing, but he doesn't talk about things on a spectrum, or at least not here, he's not. And I actually see it on a spectrum. But like I said, depends who you ask, right? Like, there's no way to really, like, measure that other than their actions. And, the debate, I think, of them is like, were they somewhat born in a certain way that they couldn't develop something? But as you see, if we're going through their background and we could see what caused it, which we are now. I don't know if he was not able to do that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was, because he's saying criminal subculture. Criminal subculture, like I mean, I wouldn't exactly word it that way, but yeah, like you see the abuse portion and the younger year portion right there, and where that's creating that type of behavior right there. Yeah, I could see it, like we could see it, so I'm pulling it all up and I'm like, oh, there it is. And then it also says in the psychologist book, or whatever, in the definitions, where it's like this type of parenting, this and that. It's like, yes, yes, yes. And then I'm looking for it, right? So I'm looking like if it's true, right? So if I'm going to another case, right? I'm like, are those things there? Boom. Yes. Sometimes, causation, a correlation doesn't always equal causation, but it's there. It's there, and it makes sense that it would be there. So I mean, that's just how I look at it, but I didn't have to go to school to learn that. So I didn't he learned his in a school. I actually learned that from my run-ins with every single one of them. So my education came from real life, from them in real life. So I have a lot of knowledge. So if it's matching up with his stuff, he's pretty on point, right? Right? I didn't go to the school he did, and we've been saying the same things. But I'm reading their stuff too, as well, going, yeah, but if I have a disagreement with something, I'm going to say, I mean, does it mean I'm right? Does it mean they're right? No. Neither way, but I'm not going to get in this big feud with them and go, I think you're fucking wrong, dude. You're way the fuck wrong. But some of this, yeah, I do think they're off because of the autism thing. The autism thing can throw you off a little bit. Um, because they mentioned masking, and I think that it's possible that they maybe included that with some people that didn't have this down proper, because they just didn't think of, like, it's about more the MO of masking than it is that somebody would mask at all. Maybe I mean, these are just my thoughts on it, but all right, I'm gonna end.